When my father-in-law raised his glass at Marrow House and called me trash in front of 50 guests, he expected tears. He assumed I was just a powerless balance sheet error in the Hollis dynasty. But Victor forgot that trash is a commodity, and commodities can be leveraged. I did not throw my wine. I smiled, checked my watch, and decided that instead of making a scene, I would simply purchase his debt, acquire his company, and terminate his employment. The air inside Marrow House was thinner than the air outside, as if the oxygen had been filtered through silk and old money before being allowed into the lungs of the guests. It was a private dining club in East Briar, Massachusetts, the sort of place that did not have a sign on the door because if you did not know where it was, you clearly did not belong there. I belonged there. Technically, I was Mrs. Ethan Hollis. I had the ring, a platinum band with an Asher-cut diamond that caught the candlelight and threw sharp, cold prisms onto the white tablecloth. I had the dress, a navy column of silk that cost more than my father made in 3 months of manual labor. But as I sat at the long mahogany table, surrounded by 20 of the Hollis family's closest associates and kin, I felt like a spy who had forgotten her cover story. Victor Hollis sat at the head of the table. He was 70 years old, but looked 50, preserved by sheer will and the best dermatologists in Zurich. He did not sit. He held court. He was currently in the middle of a performance of generosity, the kind that billionaires enact to remind everyone else of their comparative poverty. He stood up, tapping a crystal glass with a silver knife. The sound was distinct, a sharp ping that cut through the low hum of conversation. The room went silent instantly. The obedience was reflex. "I would like to make a small announcement," Victor said, his voice a smooth baritone that filled the room without effort. He smiled, but his eyes remained flat, like the surface of a frozen lake. The East Briar Arts Foundation has been struggling to keep their youth program alive this quarter. I decided this morning that such a loss would be unacceptable. I have just wired a donation of $200,000 to their operating fund. Art is the soul of civilization. After all, applause broke out. It was polite, measured, and enthusiastic enough to satisfy him without appearing sycophantic. Though it was entirely sycophantic, I clapped too. My hands felt dry. Beside me, my husband, Ethan, shifted in his chair. He was 35, handsome in a way that suggested soft living, with dark hair that fell over his forehead and eyes that always seemed to be scanning the room for an exit. Ethan did not clap. He just took a long drink of his scotch. Victor sat down, basking in the glow of his own benevolence. Then, as the waiters descended with the first course, diver scallops with a saffron reduction, he turned his head slightly. The laser focus of his attention landed on me. It was the first time the entire extended family had gathered since our wedding 6 months ago. That event had been small. At my insistence and Victor's relief, he had not hidden his disappointment then. He was not hiding it now. "So, Hazel," Victor said. The table went quiet again. They knew the tone. It was the tone of a cat toying with a mouse that had already lost a leg. "I hear you are still working." I straightened my spine against the hard wood of the chair. "Yes, Victor, I am senior financial analyst, isn't it?" He said the title as if he were tasting spoiled milk. "At a logistics firm in Boston. I work for Archer Gale," I said, keeping my voice level. "We handle supply chain financing for mid-market manufacturers. It is challenging work." "Challenging," Victor repeated. He looked around the table, inviting the others to share in the joke. "I suppose balancing a checkbook is challenging when the numbers are small." "Tell me, Hazel, does your father still drive that truck? The one with the rusted fender I saw in the wedding photos?" "My father is a retired master carpenter," I said. The anger flared in my chest, hot and sudden, but I pushed it down. I packed it into a small mental box and locked the lid. "He drove a truck because he built houses." Victor chuckled. "A carpenter. How noble. We build houses too." "Hazel, we just own the land, the lumber, the financing, and the politicians who zone the district, but I suppose hammering nails is honest work. It must be quite a shift for you, sitting here at Marrow House, The cutlery alone is likely worth more than your childhood home." A titter of laughter ran through the room. It was not loud, just a ripple of amusement at my expense. I looked at Ethan. He was staring at his scallops, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle feathering beneath the skin. He said nothing. I picked up my fork. "I am comfortable here. Victor, thank you for your concern." He smiled. "A shark breaking the surface. Oh, I am not concerned, my dear. I am fascinated. It is a modern anthropological study." The dinner continued. I ate without tasting. The scallops turned to rubber in my mouth. The wine tasted like vinegar. I focused on the mechanics of the meal. Fork to mouth, chew, swallow, sip water, nod at the woman to my right. A cousin named Felicia who spent 15 minutes talking about her horses and never once asked me a question. I was observing. It was what I did best. I watched Victor. He drank only water. He controlled the conversation like a conductor, directing questions to specific guests, cutting them off when they bored him, steering the topic toward his favorite subject, the dominance of the Hollis Crown Group. But I saw the tells. Victor's hand trembled slightly when he reached for the salt. He hit it quickly, gripping the shaker. But I saw it, and the guests. Their laughter was too quick. It came a half-second before the punchline, as if they were terrified of missing the cue. They were not enjoying his company. They were enduring it. And Ethan, my husband, the man who whispered poetry to me in the dark of our apartment in the city. Here, he was a ghost. Every time Victor mentioned business, mentioned the legacy, Ethan flinched. It was microscopic, a tiny dilation of the pupils, a stiffening of the shoulders. But it was there. The main course was cleared. The waiters poured champagne. It was time for the toasts. Victor stood again. The room froze. To family. Victor said, raising his glass. To the legacy we build. To the blood that binds us. He paused, letting the drama hang in the air. Then he turned his body fully toward me. "And to Ethan," Victor continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that reached every corner of the room. "We all worried about him. We worried he lacked the vision to secure a proper alliance. But he surprised us. He went out into the world and found Hazel." He looked at me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "It is a miracle." "Really?" Victor said. "It is a testament to Ethan's charity. He saw something in the dust that the rest of us would have stepped over. He rescued you. Hazel. He picked you up, brushed you off, and placed you at this table. It is charming, in a way. Some men collect art. Ethan collects reclamation projects." The silence was absolute. He had not used the word trash, not explicitly, but the implication hung there, heavy and suffocating. Dust, stepped over, reclamation project. He was calling me garbage. He was calling me a stray dog that his son had brought home from the pound. And then, he smiled, a wide, magnanimous grin, to Hazel. Proof that one man's refuse is another man's treasure. He drank, for a heartbeat. No one moved. Then, slowly, the guests raised their glasses. They murmured, to Hazel, their eyes darting away from mine. They pretended they had not heard the insult. They pretended it was a compliment, a quirky turn of phrase from an eccentric genius. I sat there, frozen. The champagne glass in front of me fizzed, tiny bubbles rushing to the surface to pop. I could feel the heat rising up my neck. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at Ethan. He was pale. He held his glass, but he did not drink. He looked at his father, then at me. His mouth opened, just slightly, but no sound came out. He looked terrified. I did not throw my wine. I did not flip the table. I did not scream that I had graduated summa cum laude, that I managed portfolios worth $300 million, that I had built a life from nothing while they sat on piles of inherited gold. I stood up. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised even me. I walked out of the dining room. I did not run. I walked with the precise, measured gait of a woman who had somewhere important to be. I felt their eyes on my back, boring holes into the silk of my dress. I found the ladies' restroom down a long corridor lined with oil paintings of dead white men who looked remarkably like Victor. I pushed through the heavy door and locked it behind me. The room was opulent, with marble counters and fresh orchids in a crystal vase. I went to the sink and gripped the cold porcelain. I stared at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide and dark. I was shaking. My hands trembled so hard that the platinum ring clicked against the marble. I breathed. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. He wants you to cry. I told my reflection. He wants you to break. If you break, he wins. I ran cold water over my wrists. The shock of the temperature helped ground me. I was not trash. I was Hazel Price. I was a person of substance. I was drying my hands on a linen towel when I heard the door to the men's room open. The restrooms shared a common luxe entryway, separated only by thin, louvered ventilation panels near the ceiling. The acoustics were an architectural flaw in an otherwise perfect building. Voices drifted through. One was deep, gravelly. I recognized it as the chief operating officer, a man named Sterling. The other was higher, faster, the new vice president of strategy, a man I had met briefly during cocktails. "Did you see her face?" the vice president asked. "Jesus. Victor is in rare form tonight. He is stressed." Sterling grunted. The water ran in the men's room. "He takes it out on the weakest link." "Stressed?" The vice president laughed. "A nervous sound. That is one word for it. I saw the preliminary reports for Q3. If the refinancing does not go through next month, we are dead. Keep your voice down." Sterling snapped. I froze, the towel in my hand. "I am serious," the vice president hissed. "The debt covenants are tighter than a noose. We are leveraged at 6-1. If the bank sees the real numbers on the Grafton Bay subsidiary, they will pull the credit line. We are facing a refinancing cliff. Sterling. And the board knows it. The board is a rubber stamp," Sterling said dismissively. "Not anymore. Duncan and Celeste are talking. I heard them. There is a revolt brewing. If Victor doesn't secure this capital, they might actually move on him. He is Victor Hollis," Sterling said. "He is untouchable. Everyone is untouchable until they run out of cash," the vice president said. The door opened and closed. They were gone. I stood there for a long time. The shaking had stopped. Refinancing cliff. Leverage 6-1. Grafton Bay. Board revolt. These were not emotional words. These were technical terms. These were coordinates on a map. Victor Hollis was not a god. He was a CEO with a liquidity problem. I smoothed the front of my dress. I checked my lipstick. I unlocked the door and walked back to the dining room. When I sat down, the dessert was being served. Poached pears and red wine. It looked like a crime scene on a plate. Ethan reached under the table and took my hand. His palm was sweaty. "Are you okay?" he whispered. I looked at him. I looked at the man I loved, the man who had promised to protect me. He didn't mean it. Ethan whispered, his eyes pleading with me to accept the lie. "That is just his sense of humor. He is old school. He respects you. Really. He just has a hard time showing it." I pulled my hand away. "He called me trash." "Ethan," I said softly, "and you said nothing." Ethan flinched. "Hazel, please, not here. We can't make a scene. He is the patriarch. You don't understand how it works." "I understand exactly how it works," I said. I picked up my spoon and ate a piece of the pear. It was sweet, cloying. The rest of the dinner was a blur of meaningless conversation. I answered when spoken to. I smiled when appropriate. But I was not there. I was building a spreadsheet in my mind. When the valets finally brought our car around, a modest sedan that looked like a toy next to the lineup of Bentleys and Mercedes, I felt a wave of exhaustion so heavy I almost stumbled. Ethan drove. He was silent for the first 10 minutes, navigating the winding roads of East Briar back toward the highway. Finally, he cracked. "You were quiet tonight," he said. I stared out the window at the passing trees, illuminated briefly by the headlights before disappearing into the dark. He humiliated me. Ethan, he was just being Victor. He humiliated you too, I said, turning to look at him. He called you a scavenger. He said you picked me out of the dirt. Does that not bother you? Of course it bothers me, Ethan snapped, gripping the steering wheel. But what do you want me to do? Fight him? He owns everything. Hazel, he owns my job. He owns the trust. He owns the apartment building we live in. So we are property? I asked. We are family, Ethan said. It is complicated. It is not complicated. I said, it is abusive. I took a breath. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I am not going back. I said, what? I am not attending another event. No dinners, no galas, no holidays. I will not step foot in Marrow House or any other property he owns. Hazel, you can't. I can. I cut in, and I will. Unless, Ethan glanced at me. Unless what? Unless we go to counseling. I said, a professional. Someone who can explain to you why it is not normal for a 35-year-old man to let his father call his wife garbage. And you stop excusing him. You stop saying he didn't mean it. You acknowledge reality. Ethan sighed. A long, ragged sound. Hazel, you are overreacting. Pull over. I said, what? Pull the car over. Now. He slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder of the highway. The hazard lights clicked on. A rhythmic tick-tock, tick-tock, in the silence. I turned to him. I am not overreacting. I am setting a boundary. I love you. Ethan, I love you more than I thought I could love anyone, but I will not be a casualty of your father's ego, and I will not be married to a man who is too afraid to speak. Ethan put his head on the steering wheel. He looked defeated. He looked like a little boy. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I will go. I reached out and touched his shoulder. Thank you. He looked up, his eyes wet. I am sorry. Hazel, I froze. I freeze when he gets like that. I know. I said, I did know. I saw the fear in him. It broke my heart, but pity would not save us. We drove the rest of the way in silence. When we got to our apartment in the city, Ethan went straight to bed. He curled up in a fetal position and was asleep within minutes, the sleep of the emotionally exhausted. I did not sleep. I went into the living room and opened my laptop. It was 2 a.m. I sat at the kitchen island, the blue light of the screen illuminating my face. I logged into my terminal. I did not go to social media. I did not look for comfort. I went to the SEC Edgar database. I typed in Hollis Crown Group. The filings populated the screen. 10KS, 10QS, 8KS. I started reading. Most people see numbers as static things. I see them as a narrative. A balance sheet tells a story of decisions, risks, and lies. I looked at the debt structure. The vice president had been right. The leverage was high, but that was not uncommon for a firm of that size. Then I looked at the leadership. CFO turnover. The current CFO had been in the role for 8 months. The one before him, 11 months. The one before that, 6 months. 3 chief financial officers in just over 2 years in the corporate world. That was not just a red flag. It was a siren wailing in the night. CFOs do not leave that quickly unless they see something they do not want to sign their names to. I dug deeper. I looked at the subsidiaries. There was a labyrinth of them. Hollis Logistics, Hollis Energy, Hollis Real Estate, and Grafton Bay Maritime Holdings. It was buried in a footnote in the 10K from 2 years ago. A strategic investment vehicle. It had very little revenue but massive operating expenses. What are you doing? I whispered to the empty room. I pulled up the acquisition history. Hollis Crown had been buying small companies at a rapid pace, overpaying for them, based on the multiples. Why? To hide losses? To move money? My phone buzzed on the counter. I jumped. It was 3:14 in the morning. I picked it up. A text message. The number was blocked. I opened it. He is not untouchable. If you are smart, you will look at Grafton Bay. I stared at the screen. The hairs on my arms stood up. Who is this? I typed back. The message failed to send. I sat there, the phone cold in my hand. Someone had seen me tonight. Someone knew I was looking, or someone had been waiting for a reason to reach out. And my public humiliation had been the signal. Grafton Bay. I looked back at the computer screen. Grafton Bay Maritime Holdings. Victor thought I was trash. He thought I was small. He thought I was a girl from a carpenter's house who should be grateful for the scraps from his table. He had made a critical error. He had assumed that because I was quiet, I was weak. He had assumed that because I did not fight back with insults, I did not know how to fight. I closed the laptop. I would not prove my worth to him. I would not beg for his acceptance. I would not try to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I would find out why his CFOs kept quitting. I would find out what was happening in Grafton Bay. I would find the crack in the foundation of the Hollis Crown Group. And then, I would bring a sledgehammer. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. My name is Hazel Price, and I'm about to go to war. The drive to Grafton Bay, Rhode Island, took 3 hours of gray highway and stiff silence. To Ethan, this was a weekend getaway, a bandage on the wound of the dinner party. He had booked a suite at a cliffside hotel, ordered champagne, and packed his favorite sweaters. He wanted to pretend that we were just a normal couple escaping the city, that his father had not called me trash, and that I was not currently dissecting his family's financial organs. To me, Grafton Bay was not a vacation destination. It was the headquarters of Grafton Bay Maritime Holdings, the subsidiary I had found buried in the footnotes of the Hollis Crown annual report. We arrived on a Friday afternoon. The wind was whipping off the Atlantic, cold and salty, rattling the window panes of our hotel room. While Ethan unpacked his bag, humming a tune that sounded forced, I went to the window and looked down at the harbor. It was an industrial port, mostly cranes, containers, and the rusted hulls of fishing trawlers. But toward the south end, there was a sleek, modern glass building that looked entirely out of place among the bait shops and dive bars. There it is, I thought, the black box. Ethan came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "It is beautiful, isn't it?" he asked. "It is interesting," I said. I turned in his arms. "I need to run a small errand while you shower. Just picking up some toiletries I forgot." Ethan kissed my forehead. "Do not take too long. We have dinner reservations at 6. I grabbed my coat and left. I did not go to a pharmacy. I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks from the glass building. I had arranged a meeting with Mara Kessler. Mara was one of Ethan's oldest friends, a compliance attorney who had known the Hollis family since prep school. She had been the only one at our wedding who didn't look at me like I was a staff member. She was sharp, cynical, and had distanced herself from Victor's circle years ago. She was waiting for me in a back booth, nursing a black coffee. She looked tired. "Hazel," she said, not smiling. "I was surprised you called. I heard about the dinner at Marrow House. News travels fast in the ecosystem." I sat down. "I assume everyone knows." Mara nodded. "The version I heard was that you threw a glass of wine at Victor." I corrected the record. "I threw nothing. I walked out." "Good for you," Mara said. "Most people just sit there and bleed. So, why are we in Grafton Bay? And do not tell me it is for the chowder." I leaned forward. "I want to know about Grafton Bay Maritime Holdings." Mara's eyes narrowed. She put her cup down slowly. "Hazel," she said, her voice dropping an octave, "do not do this. I am not asking for legal advice." I said, "I am asking for context. You know how Victor operates. I found this subsidiary. It has 0 revenue growth for 5 years. Yet its operating expenses are through the roof. It burns cash like a furnace. Why?" Mara looked out the window. She checked the door, then looked back at me. "Hollis Crown is built on intimidation," she said. "That is the front end. But the back end? It is paper. Victor loves paper. He loves complexity. If you are looking at maritime, you are looking at a shell game." "How so?" I asked. Mara sighed. "When I consulted for them, briefly, before I realized I liked having a soul, I saw things. Victor hates taxes, and he hates losing. He uses subsidiaries to move debt around. If one division is failing, He moves the loss to another division that has cash. Or he creates a new entity to absorb the bad assets, so the main balance sheet looks clean for the banks. Is it illegal? I asked. Mara shrugged. It is aggressive. It is on the line. But Victor is arrogant, and arrogance makes people sloppy. They stop shredding things because they think no one will ever dare to look. She leaned across the table. If you are digging, Hazel, look for the consultants. The consultants? Victor does not pay bribes. Mara said, that is too vulgar. He pays consulting fees. If there is a problem, a regulator who needs to look the other way, a union leader who needs to be quiet, a supplier who needs to lie about inventory, they get hired as a consultant. Look for the advisory firms. She finished her coffee in one gulp. Be careful. Hazel, Victor does not mind if you hate him, but if you touch his money, he will destroy you. I walked back to the hotel with my hands deep in my pockets. My mind was racing. Look for the advisory firms. That night, while Ethan slept, I sat in the bathroom with the door locked and the shower running to mask the sound of my typing. I was on my laptop, tethered to my phone's hotspot to avoid the hotel Wi-Fi. I pulled up the vendor lists for Grafton Bay Maritime. They were not public, but I had access to a vendor risk management database through my license at Archer Gale. It was a gray area, using my work tools for personal research, but I was past the point of caring about corporate policy. I found it, Northcrest Advisory. It was a limited liability company registered in Delaware. No website, no LinkedIn page, just a mailing address in a strip mall in New Jersey. I cross-referenced the payments. Grafton Bay Maritime paid Northcrest Advisory $50,000 a month for strategic guidance. Hollis Energy paid them $75,000. Hollis Logistics paid them $40,000. The payments were consistent, monthly, like rent. But then I saw the spikes. 3 years ago, in May, a lump sum of $500,000 from the logistics division. That was the same month Hollis Crown acquired a trucking fleet in Ohio. 2 years ago, in October, $200,000 from the energy division. That was the same month a lawsuit regarding an environmental spill was quietly settled. These were not consulting fees. This was a slush fund. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bathroom tiles. Victor was using Northcrest Advisory to clean up his messes. The next morning, Ethan wanted to go to the local maritime museum. I agreed, playing the part of the interested tourist. We walked through exhibits of whaling ships and harpoons. Ethan was relaxed, holding my hand, talking about how much better things would be now that we had set a boundary. He really believes it. I thought, he believes that because I said no once, the war is over. He does not understand that the war has just begun. We stopped for lunch at a clam shack near the water. It was crowded. We shared a picnic table with a young family. I went to the counter to get napkins. A man was standing there, waiting for his order. He was in his 40s, wearing a faded windbreaker. He looked at me, then looked away, then looked back. Mrs. Hollis? He asked. I froze. Yes? He looked around nervously. I saw you in the paper. He said, the wedding photos. Oh, I smiled politely. Nice to meet you. I used to work there, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. At Crown, in accounts payable. My pulse quickened. Oh? He stepped closer. He smelled of fried fish and anxiety. I saw the internal memos. He said quickly, keeping his eyes on the counterstaff. I left 2 years ago. I work at a nonprofit now. Sleeping better. Why did you leave? I asked. He laughed. A bitter, short sound. Because I was asked to sign things I did not understand. Side letters. Side letters? I repeated. Contracts that exist outside the main contract, he murmured. You sign a deal for a loan, but then you sign a side letter that changes the terms, or guarantees a buyback, or hides a liability. The auditors never see the side letters. They stay in a safe. That is how he passes the stress tests. Order for Mike, the counter girl shouted. The man jumped. That is me. Wait, I said, what is your name? He shook his head. Doesn't matter. Just check the debt covenants. They are fake. It is all held together with tape. He grabbed his tray and walked away fast. disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, gripping a handful of paper napkins. Side letters. It was fraud. It was not just aggressive accounting. It was deliberate concealment of material facts. If the banks knew, they would call the loans immediately. I walked back to the table. Ethan was smiling, dipping a fry into tartar sauce. "Everything okay?" he asked. I sat down. "Yes, just a long line." We drove back to Boston on Sunday night. The dread in Ethan's posture returned the closer we got to the city. He was bracing for re-entry. On Monday morning, the divide-and-conquer strategy began. Ethan received a text from Victor, a summons, lunch, Tuesday. Just the two of us. "We need to clear the air." Ethan showed me the phone, his face pale. "You do not have to go." I said, "I have to." He said, "If I do not go, he will come to the office, or he will call the landlord. I have to manage him." "Hazel." I said nothing. I knew he would go. 2 hours later, a courier arrived at my office at Archer Gale. The receptionist buzzed me. "Hazel, there is a package for you. It looks expensive." I went to the front desk. It was a large box wrapped in silver paper with a white ribbon. I carried it back to my desk. My colleagues were watching. I opened it. Inside was a handbag. It was a Birkin, ostrich leather, the kind of bag that cost more than my first car. It was orange, a loud, aggressive, screaming orange. There was a card tucked into the handle. "For when you want to look like you belong, V." I stared at the bag. It was beautiful, and it was hideous. It was a weapon wrapped in leather. He was telling me that my taste was cheap, that I needed his charity to fit in, and that he could buy me whenever he wanted. My coworker, Sarah, leaned over the partition. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Is that a Birkin? Your husband is amazing." I looked at the card again. I did not throw it in the trash. I did not cut it up with scissors. I took out my phone. I took a photo of the bag. I took a photo of the card. I opened a folder on my phone labeled Documentation and uploaded the images. I noted the date, the time, and the courier service. Then I put the bag back in the box and shoved it under my desk. This is not a gift. I thought, this is evidence. That night, Ethan came home from the lunch looking sick. He loosened his tie and poured a drink before he even took off his coat. "How was it?" I asked. I was sitting on the sofa, a spreadsheet open on my lap. He sat down opposite me. "He looks tired," Ethan said. "He spent the first 20 minutes asking about you." "Asking what?" "If you were happy, if the apartment was big enough, if you needed a wardrobe allowance." He sent me a bag. I said. Ethan looked up. "He did?" "Yes," with a note implying I look like a peasant without it. Ethan put his head in his hands. He is trying to apologize. He just does not know how to do it without being him. He is not apologizing. Ethan. He is checking the price tag. He wants to know what it costs to make me quiet. Ethan sighed. He offered to move me to the foundation side. The philanthropic arm? Yeah. He said I seem stressed in operations. He said the foundation is slower. Easier hours. Same pay. And what did you say? I said I would think about it. I closed my laptop. The click was loud in the quiet room. Ethan, I said, you do not want to work at the foundation. You hate the social circuit. I know, he said, his voice cracking. But what choice do I have? I stood up and walked over to him. I took the glass of scotch out of his hand and set it on the table. Tell me the truth. I said, why are you so afraid of him? It is not just respect. It is fear. Ethan looked at me. His eyes were red. Because I owe him everything. He whispered. I shook my head. You work. You have a salary. My salary is inflated. Hazel, I make double what the other VPs make. He tops it up from a trust. The apartment? The lease is in his name. My MBA tuition? He paid it. But he made me sign a loan agreement. It is forgivable only if I stay with the company for 10 years. I have 3 years left. If I leave, I owe him $200,000 immediately. I stared at him. The trap was not emotional. It was contractual. You signed a loan agreement with your own father? He made it sound like a tax thing. Ethan said. He said it was better for the estate planning. But I know what it is. It is a leash. I felt a surge of pity, followed immediately by a surge of cold practicality. Okay, I said. Okay? Ethan looked confused. We pay it, I said. We can't pay it. Hazel, we do not have $200,000 in cash. We will find it, I said. But you have to make a choice. You cannot work for him anymore. You cannot be his employee and his son and my husband all at the same time. The math does not work. I knelt in front of him. You have to step out. Ethan, quit the role. Transfer. I do not care. But we need a marriage that is not owned by Victor Hollis. He looked at me, terrified. He will cut us off. Let him. I said, I am good at being poor. I have done it before. Have you? He swallowed hard. No. Then it is time you learned, I said, because the alternative is staying a child forever. Ethan nodded slowly. He did not say yes, but he did not say no. It was a start. The next day, I took a sick day from Archer Gale. I had a meeting in Caldwell City, the financial district. I had been researching the board of Hollis Crown Group. It was a 12-person board. 8 of them were Victor's golf buddies or retired politicians who liked the 5-figure meeting fees. They would never vote against him. But there were 2 wild cards. Duncan Reeve, retired COO of a massive aerospace firm. He was known for being a stickler for operations. He hated inefficiency. And Celeste Muir, an heiress, yes, but a serious investor. She ran a socially responsible investment fund. She cared about governance. She cared about optics. They were the cracks in the wall, but I could not approach them. Not yet. I was just the daughter-in-law. They would see me as a disgruntled family member. I needed a professional front. I needed Noah Langford. Noah was an investment strategist I had met at a conference 3 years ago. He ran a boutique firm called Blue Alder Capital. He was hungry, smart, and he liked complex, distressed assets. We met at a steakhouse in Caldwell City. It was the kind of place where deals were made over martini lunches. I drank sparkling water. Hazel, Noah said, shaking my hand, it has been a while. I see you married into royalty. I sat down. I married into a mess. Noah, he raised an eyebrow. Trouble in paradise? I placed a manila folder on the table. I did not open it. I am not here to gossip. I said, I am here to pitch an opportunity. Noah looked at the folder. He took a sip of his drink. I am listening. Hollis Crown Group, I said. He laughed. You want me to short your father-in-law's company? That is cold. Hazel, I want you to look at the fundamentals. I said, it is undervalued. Undervalued? Noah scoffed. It is a dinosaur. Victor Hollis hasn't innovated since the 90s. It is undervalued because it is mismanaged. I said, the sum of the parts is worth 40% more than the current market cap. The logistics division alone is a gold mine, but it is being bled dry to cover losses in real estate and experimental ventures. I tapped the folder. I have done the analysis. Noah, the debt is toxic. The board is asleep. There are governance risks that, if exposed, would drop the stock price by 20% overnight. And why is that an opportunity? Noah asked. Because if the stock drops, it becomes cheap enough to buy a controlling interest, I said, or at least enough of an interest to force a board seat. Noah looked at me. His amusement was gone. He was looking at me like I was a shark. You want to launch an activist campaign? Against your own family? I want to correct a governance failure. I said calmly, there are irregularities. Noah, consulting fees to shell companies, side letters hiding debt. I can prove it. I pushed the folder toward him. This isn't revenge. I lied. It was revenge, but it was also business. This is a correction. And if you help me structure the vehicle, Blue Alder Capital gets the fees and the credit for the turnaround. Noah stared at the folder for a long minute. He knew what this was. This was insider knowledge weaponized. This was dangerous. But Noah was hungry. He put his hand on the folder. Who else knows? He asked. No one, I said. Just you and me. He opened the folder and looked at the first page. It was my chart of the Northcrest advisory payments. He whistled low. "Okay. Hazel," he said, looking up with a grin. "Tell me about the side letters." I leaned back in the booth. I told him everything. And as I spoke, I felt the shift. I was no longer the woman shaking in the restroom at Marrow House. I was the architect of a collapse. Victor Hollis had called me trash. He was about to find out that I was the most expensive disposal service in history. Revenge is often depicted as a crime of passion, a chaotic explosion of screaming and broken glass. But in the world of high finance, revenge is a compliance issue. If I wanted to take down Victor Hollis, I could not just storm the castle. I had to file the correct paperwork, adhere to SEC regulations, and ensure that when the dust settled, I was not the one in handcuffs. We named the vehicle Blue Alder Capital. It was a special-purpose partnership, structured meticulously by a legal team that cost $600 an hour. I sat in a conference room in Boston, surrounded by 3 lawyers who specialized in corporate governance and conflict of interest. They looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Let us be clear on the parameters. The lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Joyce, said, "You are the wife of an executive at the Target Company. You are also a financial professional. You cannot trade on non-public information. You cannot use documents you found on your husband's desk. You cannot use pillow talk." I know. I said, I had not used Ethan's secrets. The Northcrest advisory payments were found using my own industry access. The debt covenants were inferred from public filings. I am building a thesis based on governance failure and mismanagement. The information I am using is available to any shareholder who bothers to look. Joyce nodded slowly. Then we proceed. Blue Alder will be the face. You are a silent partner. Noah Langford is the general partner. He makes the trades. You provide the strategy. We signed the papers. 2 days later, Blue Alder Capital began to eat. We did not buy big blocks of stock. That would have triggered disclosure thresholds and alerted Victor immediately. We bought in the noise. 1,000 shares here, 5,000 shares there. We used options to gain exposure without immediate ownership. We were like termites in the woodwork of the Hollis Crown Group, invisible, persistent, and hungry. Noah Langford was enjoying himself. He called me every evening with a status report. "We are up to 0.4%, he said on a Tuesday. "The stock is sluggish, volume is low. No one is watching." "Hazel, they will watch soon." I said, I was right. Victor Hollis did not get to be a billionaire by being entirely blind. He sensed a shift in the wind. He sensed that the stock price was not behaving the way he wanted it to. His response was classic, Victor. Distraction. On a Thursday morning, the press release hit the wires. Hollis Crown Group to acquire Vantigrid Freight in transformational clean energy deal. I read the announcement on my phone while drinking coffee in my kitchen. Ethan was in the shower. Vantigrid was a startup. It made electric autonomous dollies for warehouses. It had zero revenue and burned cash at a rate that would make a venture capitalist weep. But it was sexy. It was green. It was future tech. Victor was paying $300 million for it. "He is insane," I whispered. He was using the acquisition to pump the stock. He wanted headlines about innovation to bury the whispers about debt. He was buying a shiny new hood ornament for a car that had no engine. Noah called me 10 minutes later. "Did you see it?" he asked. "I saw it." I said, "This is good for us." "Hazel, how is this good?" "He is wasting capital he does not have." "Exactly," Noah said. "He is over-leveraging even further to buy Vantigrid. He is desperate to show growth. When we expose the liquidity crisis, this acquisition will look like negligence. It is the rope. Hazel, he just bought the rope to hang himself." I hung up. I felt a knot in my stomach. I was watching a train wreck in slow motion, and my husband was a passenger in the dining car. That evening, we went to counseling. I had forced the issue. Ethan had resisted. But after the dinner at Marrow House and the gift of the handbag, he had run out of excuses. "Doctor." Aris was a calm, gray-haired man who operated out of a brownstone in the South End. He did not take insurance, and he did not take nonsense. Ethan sat on the edge of the leather sofa. His hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white. "Why are we here?" "Ethan?" "Doctor," Eris asked. Ethan looked at the floor. "Because my wife is unhappy with my family." "Doctor." Eris looked at me. "Is that why you are here?" "Hazel?" "I am here because my husband is being erased." I said. Ethan flinched. "I am not being erased. You are." I said gently. "You are 35 years old, and you are terrified to buy a car or change jobs or speak your mind without checking if your father approves. You are living in a cage. Ethan, it is a gilded cage, but it is still a cage." Ethan was silent for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. "I do not know who I am without him," he whispered finally. It was the most honest thing he had ever said. "I am a Hollis," Ethan continued, his voice shaking. "That is all I have ever been. If I walk away, if I quit, I am just a guy with a resume gap and a disappointed father. I become nobody. You become free." I said. "Freedom is expensive," Ethan said. "You do not understand. Hazel, you built yourself. You have a foundation. I have architecture. I am a structure he built. If he pulls the support beams, I collapse." I reached out and took his hand. It was cold. "Then we build new beams," I said. He looked at me with such desperation that it broke my heart. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell him about Blue Alder, about Noah, about the plan to liberate the company, but I couldn't. If I told him, I would make him an accomplice. If I told him, he would have to choose between betraying his father and betraying his wife. It was too much weight for him to carry. I had to protect him by lying to him. The war escalated the following week. I came home to find a heavy cream envelope on the hallway table. It was hand-addressed in calligraphy. I opened it. The Hollis Crown Annual Gala. To benefit the Harborstone Preservation Society. It was the biggest social event of the season. Victor used it to parade his power. But inside the formal invitation was a smaller card, plain white cardstock, handwritten in blue ink. "Victor is preparing a story about you. Be careful. C.M. Celeste Muir, the board member, the philanthropist, the woman who had been quietly watching Victor's tyranny for years. She was signaling me. She knew something was coming. I showed the invitation to Ethan. "We have to go," he said, looking at the card with dread. "It is mandatory." "I know." I said, "I am sorry." "Hazel, I know you said no more events. This one is different." I said. I did not explain why. I did not tell him that I was walking into the lion's den not as a victim, but as a surveyor. The gala was held in Harborstone, New York, at a sprawling waterfront estate that Victor had rented for the evening. There were 300 guests. Senators, CEOs, models, and the hangers-on who lived off the crumbs of the wealthy. I wore black, not a mourning dress, but armor. It was sleek, high-necked, and tailored to within an inch of its life. I pulled my hair back tight. I wore no jewelry except my wedding band. As we walked into the ballroom, the noise was deafening, crystal clinking, laughter, the drone of a string quartet fighting to be heard over the gossip. Victor was at the center of the room, holding court. He saw us enter. He did not wave, he just smiled, a small, tight expression that promised pain. We circulated. I played the part. I smiled. I shook hands. I accepted compliments on my dress. Then, the ambush happened. I was standing near the bar, waiting for a sparkling water, while Ethan was trapped in a conversation with a zoning commissioner. "Mrs. Hollis?" I turned. A woman was standing there. She was young, pretty in a sharp, predatory way, holding a recorder. "I am Lydia Vane," she said. "Lifestyle Legacy magazine. Do you have a moment?" "I do not. Actually," I said pleasantly. "I am just getting water. It will only take a second," Lydia said, stepping closer, blocking my exit. "We are running a profile on the new generation of the Hollis family. I wanted to give you a chance to comment on the rumors." "Rumors?" I asked. I kept my face still. "That you and Ethan are having financial troubles?" Lydia said. Her voice was loud enough to carry. Several guests turned to look, and that your marriage was strategic. Strategic? That you targeted Ethan? She said, smiling as if we were sharing a joke. Sources close to the family say you were very focused on his trust fund during the courtship, that you have been pushing for access to the family accounts. Is it true you pressured him to pay off your student loans? The room seemed to go quiet around me. It was a lie, a grotesque, inverted lie. Ethan's student loans were the issue, not mine. I had paid my own way through state school. I looked at Lydia. I saw the hunger in her eyes. She did not care about the truth. She had a narrative to sell. Who are your sources? Lydia? I asked calmly. I cannot reveal that. Obviously, I said. I took a sip of my water. I have been financially independent since I was 22. I said, my student loans were paid off 5 years before I met my husband. If you print otherwise, you will be hearing from my lawyer regarding libel. As for my marriage, it is based on mutual respect, a concept you might find difficult to understand, given your line of questioning. Lydia's smile faltered. Make sure you spell my maiden name correctly. I added, it is Price, Price. I walked away. I did not run. My heart was hammering. Victor is preparing a story about you. He was planting a narrative in the press. He was painting me as a gold digger. He wanted to discredit me before I could ever open my mouth about his company. If I spoke up later about the fraud, he could point to the articles and say, she is just a greedy wife who didn't get what she wanted. I found a quiet corner on the terrace. I needed to think. I pulled out my phone. I searched for Lydia Vane. She was a freelancer, but her recent articles had all been placed by a specific PR agency, Sterling Stone. I searched Sterling Stone. They were a boutique crisis management firm. I logged into my Archer Gale remote desktop app. I had the vendor list for Northcrest Advisory saved in my cache. I scrolled down. Northcrest Advisory paid a monthly retainer of $15,000 to Sterling Stone. The circle closed. Victor used company money, shareholder money, to pay Northcrest. Northcrest paid the PR firm. The PR firm fed lies to the journalist to destroy my reputation. He was using his own investors' capital to fund a smear campaign against his daughter-in-law. It was so corrupt, so petty, and so beautifully traceable. Hazel. I turned. A man was standing in the shadows of the terrace. He was older, with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite and left in the rain. Duncan Reeve, the board member, the retired operations executive. Mr. Reeve, I said. Call me Duncan, he said. He held a cigar. Unlit. You handled that girl well. Lydia. She is a viper. She is a paid employee, I said. Duncan chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Everyone here is a paid employee. Hazel. Even me. He stepped into the light. I hear you are interested in governance, he said quietly. I looked at him. I remembered what Celeste Muir had written. Signaling alliance. I am interested in the truth. Duncan, I said, the truth is boring. Duncan said, the truth is that we are a rubber stamp. I stepped closer. Why do you stay? I asked. You do not need the money. You have a reputation. I stay because I am afraid of what happens if I leave, Duncan said. He looked out at the water. If I resign, he replaces me with another crony. At least if I am in the room, I can slow things down. Can you? I asked. Or does he just run over you? Duncan looked at me. His eyes were tired. He sends the board packets 4 hours before the meeting, he whispered. 500 pages of financials. We can't read them. We can't analyze them. And then he calls the vote. If we ask for more time, he claims the deal will die and it will be our fault. He forces the vote. I said, every time. But he looked around. I keep the originals, he said. What? The incomplete packets. The emails where I asked for more time and was denied. The minutes that were altered before they were filed. I keep my own files. Shadow files. My breath caught in my throat. Where are they? I asked. In a safe, Duncan said. In my home. Why are you telling me this? Duncan looked at me. Because I saw your face when he insulted you at dinner, and I saw your face just now with that reporter. You are not afraid of him, and that makes you the most dangerous person in his orbit." He put the unlit cigar in his pocket. "If you ever have a way to stop him, a lawful way, call me." He walked back inside. I stood there, the ocean wind cold on my face. The plan had shifted, at the beginning. This was about buying a company to fire a bully. It was personal. It was about my dignity. But now I saw the rot. I saw the money being siphoned to smear campaigns. I saw the board being coerced. I saw the fake acquisitions. This was not just about me anymore. This was about saving a $3 billion entity from a man who treated it like his personal piggy bank. It was about the employees who would lose their pensions when the debt bomb exploded. I was not just an investor. I was a steward. I walked back into the ballroom. I found Ethan. "Let's go home," I said. He looked relieved. "Please." We left. The next morning, the hammer dropped. Ethan went to work early. I was working from home, analyzing the Vantigrid deal structure. When my phone rang, it was Ethan. I answered. "Hey, did you forget your lunch?" "Hazel." He choked out. His voice was broken. "What happened?" I asked. Standing up, "He did it." Ethan said, He demoted me." "What?" I was called into HR. They said my performance in operations has been lacking. They are moving me to special projects. Special projects? That is the basement. "Ethan, that is where they put people before they fire them." "I know." He sobbed. "I know. And Hazel." He announced my replacement. "Who?" I asked. "Who did he put in operations?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Chloe? Chloe? Victor's niece? The 24-year-old who just graduated art school?" Yes. I closed my eyes. It was a public execution. He had replaced his son, his loyal, terrified son, with a child who knew nothing about logistics. Just to prove a point, he was punishing Ethan for the boundaries we had set. He was punishing Ethan for me. And he was destroying the operations of his own company to do it. "He is crazy," Ethan whispered. "He is actually crazy. Come home." "Ethan," I said, "just come home." I hung up the phone. I looked at the whiteboard in my home office. It was covered in timelines, stock prices, and arrows connecting Northcrest to Vantigrid to the board. I picked up a red marker. I drew a circle around the date of the next shareholder meeting. Victor Hollis had just made his final mistake. He thought he had broken his son. He thought he had humiliated me. But all he had done was give me the moral mandate to burn his kingdom to the ground. I picked up my phone and dialed Noah. "Buy more." I said. "How much?" Noah asked. "Everything." I said, "Max out the credit facility. Call Redwood Meridian. We are not just taking a position anymore. Noah, we are going for control, to take down a giant. You do not throw stones. You hire a demolition crew. Blue Alder Capital was agile, but it was small. We had enough capital to annoy Victor Hollis, but not enough to unseat him, to force a board vote, to demand an independent investigation, to truly threaten the governance structure of a $3 billion conglomerate. I needed weight. I needed a partner with institutional gravity. I found that gravity in Redwood Meridian Partners. They were an activist hedge fund based in Manhattan, the kind of firm that did not just invest in companies, they digested them. They had a reputation for identifying bloated, mismanaged corporations, buying a significant stake, and then relentlessly bullying the board until they unlocked value. They were sharks, but they were sharks who followed the rules. I sat in a glass-walled conference room on the 45th floor of a skyscraper in Midtown. Opposite me sat Graham Vance, the senior partner at Redwood. He was a man who looked like he had been born in a suit, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his eyes scanning the pitch deck I had prepared. Noah Langford sat beside me, silent. "This was my show. Your thesis is aggressive, Mrs. Hollis," Graham said, not looking up from the papers. "You are alleging systemic fraud in the related party transactions. I am alleging that the Hollis Crown Group is being run as a personal fiefdom rather than a public company." I said, my voice was steady. I pointed to page 12. Look at the margins in the logistics division. They are deteriorating year over year. While the industry average is climbing. Why? Because the division is being forced to overpay for consulting services from entities that do not exist on the public register. Graham turned the page. Northcrest Advisory. Correct, I said. And look at the acquisition of Vantagrid Freight. $300 million for a pre-revenue startup. Who brokered the deal? A boutique firm in Zurich that has shared directorships with Victor Hollis's private family office. I paused. He is moving money out of the public company and into private hands. I said, he is hollowing out the asset base to fund his own lifestyle and to cover the debts of his failures. Graham closed the folder. He looked at me for a long time. You are the daughter-in-law, he said. I am. If we move on this, he will make it personal. He will say you are a disgruntled family member. He will say you are vindictive. He has already started. I said. Graham nodded slowly. And if we succeed? If we force him out? Then we have a company with solid fundamentals. I said. We strip out the corruption. We sell off the non-core assets like the vanity real estate projects. And we refocus on the logistics network. The stock price is currently trading at $40. Without the Hollis discount, it is worth $70. Graham smiled. It was a terrifying smile. 70, he repeated. 70. Graham tapped the table. Get us the documentation on the debt covenants, he said. If the numbers hold up, Redwood Meridian is in. We shook hands. It felt like I had just handed a loaded gun to a mercenary. I knew that Redwood would not care about Ethan, or me, or the morality of the situation. They cared about the spread between 40 and 70, but right now, their greed was the only shield I had. Victor, however, was not waiting for the SEC filings. He was fighting the war on a different front. The smear campaign began on a Tuesday morning. It started on the investment forums, StockTwits, Reddit, the comment sections of Yahoo Finance. Anonymous accounts began posting deep dives into my background. Hazel Price, the truth behind the resume. Is the Hollis daughter-in-law unlicensed? Sources say Hazel Price falsified her academic records to land her role at Archer Gale. By Wednesday, it had jumped to the blogs. A mid-tier gossip site ran a headline, "The Billionaire's Mistake: How Ethan Hollis Was Manipulated into Marriage." The article was vile. It claimed I had targeted Ethan at a vulnerable moment, that I had isolated him from his family, and that I was currently under investigation for embezzlement at my current job. It was all lies, every word. But the internet does not care about truth. It cares about volume. I sat at my desk at Archer Gale, staring at my screen. My hands were shaking. I typed my own name into the search bar. Hazel Price embezzlement. Hazel Price fraud. Hazel Price escort rumors. The algorithm had already associated my name with crime. In 48 hours, Victor had turned me from a respected financial analyst into a pariah. My boss, the director of analysis, called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable. "Hazel," he said, closing the door. "We have been getting calls." "Calls?" "Reporters, asking about your credentials, asking if you are under internal review." I felt the blood drain from my face. "It is a smear campaign." "John," I said, "my father-in-law is retaliating against a personal dispute. I believe you." John said, "He looked tired, but compliance is nervous. They want to run a background check again. Just to be safe. I understand." I said. I walked back to my desk, feeling the eyes of my colleagues on me. They were whispering. I could feel it. The doubt. Is it true? Did she fake her degree? Is she really a grifter? That night, I went home to find Ethan sitting in the dark in the living room. The blue light of his tablet illuminated his face. He was crying. "Don't read it," I said, dropping my bag. He looked up. His eyes were red and swollen. "They are saying you trapped me," he whispered. "They are saying you drugged me. Hazel, there are thousands of comments, people who don't even know us." I took the tablet from his hands and turned it off. "It is noise, Ethan. It is a strategy. He is trying to break us. It is working." Ethan said, He sounded hollow. I can't go into the office. Everyone looks at me like I'm a victim. Like I am a fool who married a con artist. You know who I am, I said, gripping his shoulders. You know the truth. Do I? He asked. The question hung in the air. Cold and sharp, I stepped back. What is that supposed to mean? Ethan put his head in his hands. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. You are so cold. Hazel, you are fighting him like you are him. You have secrets. You are always on your laptop. You have meetings you don't tell me about. I am trying to save us. I snapped. Are you? Or are you trying to beat him? Because right now, it feels like I am just the rope in a tug of war. I did not have an answer. Because in the dark, in the quiet of my own mind, I was asking myself the same question. I did not cry. I did not collapse. I hired a lawyer, not a corporate lawyer, a reputation defense attorney. His name was Vance, and he charged $800 an hour to send cease and desist letters that were terrifying in their specificity. We will not sue for libel yet, Vance told me. Litigation keeps the story in the news cycle. We will go after the platforms. We will flag the content as harassment. We will demand the IP addresses of the anonymous posters. Can we find them? I asked. Vance smiled. It is sloppy. They are using a bot farm in Macedonia. But the payment trail usually leads back to a domestic marketing firm. We will find them. While Vance fought the surface war, Mara Kessler fought the deep war. She called me 2 days later. I have something. She said, meet me at South Station. I met her on the train platform. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, looking over her shoulder. You are being paranoid. I said, I am being prudent. She corrected. Victor has private security. They are ex-military. She handed me a USB drive. What is this? A deposition, she said, or a draft of one. I looked at the small silver drive. Who? A woman named Elena. Mara said, she was an administrative assistant at Northcrest Advisory. She quit 6 months ago. She filed a sealed complaint with the State Labor Board, alleging she was fired for refusing to process payments to a personal account. Whose personal account? It was an offshore entity, Mara said, but the beneficiary is listed as a trust, the V.H. Revocable Trust. Victor Hollis, direct evidence, Mara whispered, company money, to a shell firm, to his private trust. That is embezzlement. Hazel, that is prison. Will she testify? I asked. She is terrified. Mara said, she signed an NDA. They paid her $50,000 to shut up, but if there is a subpoena, if there is a federal investigation, she might flip. I closed my hand around the drive. This is the nail. I said, be careful. Hazel, if you use this, you are not just getting him fired. You are sending him to jail. Is that what you want? I thought about the smear campaign. I thought about Ethan crying in the dark. I thought about the text message. Victor is preparing a story about you. Yes, I said, but the pressure was cracking the foundation of my marriage. Our next counseling session with Dr. Aris was a disaster. Ethan did not sit next to me. He sat in the armchair in the corner. I feel like I'm living with a stranger. Ethan said to the doctor, she is obsessed. She has spreadsheets of my family's history. She tracks my father's movements. I am protecting our future. I argued, you are destroying my past, Ethan shouted. It was the first time I had ever heard him raise his voice. That is still my father. Hazel, he is a monster. Yes, but he is my father. If you destroy the company, what happens to the cousins? What happens to the employees? What happens to me? I looked at him. I am trying to free you. I said, I never asked to be freed like this. Ethan said, I wanted to move away. I wanted to get a different job. I didn't want a war. Doctor? Aris looked at me. Hazel, he said gently, are you fighting for Ethan? Or are you fighting because you were humiliated? I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the words died in my throat. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. The invitation came 3 days later. It was not a card this time. It was a phone call from Victor's executive assistant. Mr. Hollis requests your presence for dinner. The assistant said, "Tonight, 7 o'clock, at the Wexler Hills estate." "Ethan too?" I asked. "No, just you, Mrs. Hollis?" I felt a cold prickle of danger. "Why?" "He wants to apologize," the assistant said. "He says things have gone too far. He wants to make peace." I hung up. I knew it was a trap. Victor Hollis did not apologize. He negotiated. I called Noah. "Do not go." Noah said, "I have to." I said, "He's going to make an offer. I need to know what it is. Bring a lawyer." "He won't let a lawyer in the door. It is a private dinner." "Then wear a wire." "I can't. Connecticut is a two-party consent state for in-person recording. If I record him secretly, I can't use it in court. It would be inadmissible." "Then what are you going to do?" "I am going to listen," I said, "and then I am going to trap him." I drove to Wexler Hills alone. The estate was a fortress of stone and ivy, set on 50 acres of manicured woodland. The driveway was a mile long. A butler opened the door. He led me through the silent house to the library. Victor was sitting by the fire. He was wearing a velvet smoking jacket. He looked like the lord of the manor, benevolent and weary. "Hazel," he said, standing up. "Thank you for coming." I did not shake his hand. "Victor," I said, "please, sit." I sat in a leather wingback chair. He poured 2 glasses of cognac. I did not touch mine. "I wanted to speak with you directly," Victor said, swirling his glass, "without the noise, without the lawyers, without—" "Ethan, where is the apology?" I asked. Victor smiled. He sat down opposite me. I admit, I was harsh at the dinner. He said, "My humor can be misunderstood. And the press? Regrettable. Once these stories start, they are hard to stop." "You started them," I said. Victor waved a hand. "Details. The point is, Hazel, this conflict is bad for everyone. It is bad for the family. It is bad for Ethan. I see how much he is suffering. Do you?" I tightened my jaw. "I see it." "Good. Then you understand why we need to end this." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. He placed it on the small table between us. "This is a peace treaty," he said. I looked at it. It was a settlement agreement. "Read it," he urged. I picked it up. It was generous, obscenely generous. It offered a payout of $5 million to me. Personally, it offered to forgive Ethan's student loans and the debt he owed the company. But then I read the conditions. Clause 4. The recipient agrees to resign from all current employment and refrain from seeking future employment in the financial services sector. Clause 5. The recipient agrees to a lifetime non-disclosure agreement regarding all affairs of the Hollis Crown Group. Clause 6. The recipient agrees to withdraw all inquiries, formal or informal, regarding the company's operations. I looked up. "You want to buy me out?" I said, "I want to retire you." Victor corrected. "You can live a life of leisure. Hazel, you can travel. You can raise children. You can be the wife Ethan needs. And if I refuse?" Victor's face changed. The benevolence vanished. The eyes went flat. "If you refuse," he said softly, "I will finish what I started in the press. I will make you radioactive. You will never work in finance again. I will sue you for corporate espionage. I will bankrupt your father. And I will make sure Ethan leaves you." He leaned forward. "You are a bright girl, Hazel, but you are a tourist in this world. You think you can fight me with spreadsheets? I own the ink. The spreadsheets are printed on." He took a sip of his cognac. "Sign the paper. Take the money. Go back to being a wife. It is the only role you are suited for." I placed the paper back on the table. I stood up. "No," I said. Victor sighed. He looked disappointed. "That is a mistake. I am not a tourist." "Victor," I said, "and I am not for sale." I walked out. I walked through the silent house, out the heavy front door, and into the cold night air. I got into my car. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I drove. I drove out of the estate, out of Wexler Hills. I drove for 40 minutes. Crossing the state line into New York, I pulled into a rest stop on the highway. New York is a one-party consent state for telephone recordings. As long as one person on the line consents to the recording, me, it is legal. I took out my phone. I opened a voice recording app. I dialed Victor's personal cell number. He answered on the second ring. "Changed your mind already?" he asked. He sounded smug. I needed to be clear. "Victor," I said. My voice was calm. I needed him to repeat it. "I just left your house," I said, "regarding the offer you made. The $5 million. Yes? And the condition that I quit my job and never work in finance again, that is the deal." "Hazel," Victor said, "take it or leave it." "And if I don't take it?" I asked. "You said you would make me unemployable. You said you would bankrupt my father. I said I would destroy you." Victor said, "And I meant it. Do not test me. Hazel, you have 24 hours to sign. After that, the offer is zero and I unleash the lawyers." "I understand," I said. I hung up. I stopped the recording. I had him. He had just confirmed the bribe. He had confirmed the threat. He had confirmed the condition of employment termination. It was extortion. It was witness tampering. I saved the file. I emailed it to Vance. I emailed it to Mara. I emailed it to Noah. Then I put the phone down and gripped the steering wheel. I had the evidence, but I felt dirty. I was playing his game now. I was recording phone calls in rest stops. I was weaponizing the law. Was I still the hero of this story? Or was I just the new villain? I drove home. The next morning, Redwood Meridian dropped the hammer. They sent a formal letter to the board of directors of the Hollis Crown Group. It was filed with the SEC. It was public. To the board of directors, Redwood Meridian Partners, in conjunction with Blue Alder Capital, beneficially owns 5.2% of the outstanding common stock of Hollis Crown Group. We have identified severe governance failures, including undisclosed related party transactions, breach of fiduciary duty by the CEO, and material misstatements regarding the company's debt position. We demand an immediate independent review of the Northcrest advisory payments. We demand the immediate resignation of Victor Hollis. The stock market reacted instantly. Hollis Crown stock plunged 12% in the first hour of trading. The news outlets picked it up. Activist investor targets, Hollis Crown, Billionaire under siege. I watched the ticker on the television in my office. It had begun. The siege was official, but Victor had one more card to play. That afternoon, Noah called me. His voice was urgent. "Hazel, we have a problem. What is it? Did the board respond?" "No," Noah said. "It is the lenders, the bank syndicate. What about them?" "The drop in share price triggered a margin call on the debt," Noah said, "and the lenders are spooked by the allegation of fraud. They are threatening to accelerate the loans." "Accelerate? You mean call them in?" "Yes, all of them." My stomach dropped. If the banks called the loans, the company would be insolvent within days. But that is not the worst part. Noah said, "What is the worst part?" "Victor is refusing to negotiate with the banks." Noah said, "He is threatening to sell off the assets." "Sell them?" "He is telling the board that the only way to pay the debt is to sell the logistics division to a private equity firm." I froze. The logistics division was the only healthy part of the company. It was the crown jewel. If he sold it, there would be nothing left but the bad debt and the empty shell. "He is scorching the earth," I whispered. "He is going to burn the company down." Noah said, "He would rather destroy it than let you win." I looked at the screen. The red line of the stock price was still falling. I had cornered the beast, but I had forgotten that a cornered beast does not surrender. It attacks, and Victor Hollis was preparing to kill the hostage. The bylaws of the Hollis Crown Group were written in 1982, a document designed to ensure that Victor Hollis could never be removed from his own throne. They were a thicket of legal barbed wire, requiring supermajorities, extended notice periods, and procedural hurdles that made a coup nearly impossible. But Victor had forgotten one thing. He had written those bylaws to protect himself from outsiders. He had never imagined he would need to protect himself from the women on his own board. We needed an emergency meeting. The lenders were circling. The stock was in freefall. trading at $28 a share. Every hour that Victor remained in control was costing the shareholders millions. Graham Vance, the partner from Redwood Meridian, sent the demand letter at 8 in the morning, pursuant to Article 4, Section 2. We demand an emergency session of the Board of Directors to address the imminent liquidity crisis. Victor's response was immediate and dismissive. Denied. Article 4 requires 10 business days of notice for a special meeting. We will convene in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Graham said, pacing the floor of our war room in the Blue Alder offices. In 2 weeks, there will be no company. The banks will have seized the assets. He is stalling so he can sell the logistics division to his friends at private equity for pennies on the dollar. We need a waiver, I said. I was looking at the bylaws on the screen. If 3 directors certify that there is an existential threat to the corporation, the notice period is waived. We have Duncan. Noah said, "Who is the third?" "We need Celeste," I said. I called Celeste Muir. She did not answer. I called her assistant. I was told she was unavailable. He is pressuring her. I said, "He knows she is the swing vote." I drove to her house. It was a risk. If Victor saw me there, he would claim collusion. But I did not care. The company was bleeding out. Celeste lived in a townhouse in Beacon Hill. She opened the door herself. She looked pale. "Hazel," she said, "you should not be here. The company is going to default on Friday." "Celeste," I said, "you know the numbers. You saw the report from Redwood. Victor says he has a plan." Celeste said, her voice trembling, "He says he is selling the logistics arm. He says it will clear the debt. He is selling the engine to pay for the paint job." I said, "If he sells logistics, Hollis Crown is just a shell of bad real estate and lawsuits. The stock will go to zero. The pension fund will be wiped out." "Is that your legacy?" "Celeste, you talk about ethical investing. Is destroying 5,000 jobs ethical?" She looked at me. She was afraid. Victor had likely threatened her standing in the social circles she valued. "He will destroy me," she whispered. "He is already destroying you." I said, "He is making you an accomplice to negligence. If the company fails, the shareholders will sue the board. They will sue you. Celeste, they will take everything." I held out the waiver form I had typed up. "Sign it," I said. "Be the leader he refuses to be." She took the pen. Her hand shook, but she signed. We filed the waiver at noon. The meeting was set for 48 hours later. Victor was cornered, and like any predator, when the physical escape is blocked, he went for the psychological throat. The next day, Ethan went to the headquarters to clear out his desk. He had been effectively fired, moved to the basement special projects role, but he wanted to retrieve his personal files before the board meeting turned the building into a war zone. He texted me at 2 o'clock. "He wants to see me. Do not go." I typed back, "I have to." Ethan replied, "He is blocking security from letting me leave with my box. He says he needs to inspect it for proprietary data." I drove to the headquarters. I would not let Ethan face him alone. When I arrived at the executive floor, the atmosphere was funereal. The assistants kept their heads down. The phones were ringing, unanswered. I found them in the glass-walled conference room near the CEO's office. Victor was standing. Ethan was sitting. Victor looked immaculate. He showed no signs of stress. His suit was pressed, his hair perfect. "Ah, Hazel," Victor said as I pushed open the door. "Right on time. I was just telling Ethan about the future. We are leaving." "Victor," I said, "give Ethan his box." Victor ignored me. He looked at his son. "I made a mistake." "Ethan," Victor said. His voice was warm, paternal. It was the voice he used when he gave toasts. "I was hard on you. I pushed you into operations when you weren't ready. I see that now." Ethan said nothing. He was gripping the arms of his chair. "But this mess?" Victor gestured to the window. "To the city outside. This attack on our family? It has clarified things. I need a successor I can trust. Not a stranger. Not a board appointee. Blood." He leaned against the table. "I am prepared to reinstate you, Ethan, as Executive Vice President. With a path to CEO in 2 years, I will mentor you properly this time. No yelling, no pressure. We will fix this together. Ethan looked up. His eyes were wide. It was everything he had ever wanted. Approval, power, a future. What is the catch? I asked. Victor did not look at me. He kept his eyes locked on Ethan. You just have to cut the cancer out, Victor said softly. He pointed a finger at me. She is the reason we are here. Ethan. She brought the wolves to the door. She leaked the data. She turned the board against us. She hates us. She hates you. That is a lie. Ethan said. His voice was weak. Is it? Victor asked. Look at her. She is cold. She is calculating. Did she ever really love you? Or were you just the key to the lock? Victor walked around the table and put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Divorce her. Ethan, file the papers tomorrow. Denounce her actions. Tell the board she manipulated you to get insider information. If you do that, we can invalidate the Redwood claims. We can save the company, and you and I, we will run it together. I stood there. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the final weapon. He was not trying to buy me off anymore. He was trying to amputate me from my husband's life. Ethan looked at Victor. Then he looked at me. I did not speak. I could not beg him. If I begged, I lost. He had to choose. Ethan stood up. He shrugged Victor's hand off his shoulder. No, Ethan said. Victor blinked. Excuse me? I said no, Ethan said. His voice was louder this time. Victor's face hardened. You are making a mistake. You are choosing a nobody over your legacy. She is not a nobody, Ethan said. He walked over and stood next to me. He took my hand. His grip was tight. She is the only person who has ever told me the truth. You lied to me my whole life. Dad, you told me I was weak so you could control me. You told me I was stupid so I would not ask questions. Ethan, Victor warned. His voice dropped to a growl. I am done, Ethan said. I do not want your job. I do not want your money. And I definitely do not want your mentorship. Ethan picked up his box of personal items from the table. We are leaving, he said. He pulled me toward the door. Victor screamed. It was a raw, ugly sound. You walk out that door and you are dead to me. Do you hear me? I will cut you out of the will. You will rot in a rental apartment. Ethan stopped at the door. He turned back. I would rather rot in a rental than live in this asylum, he said. We walked out. In the elevator, Ethan slumped against the wall. He was shaking. I am sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry I didn't say it sooner. I hugged him. I held him while we descended 40 floors. You were brave. I said, I was terrified. He said, that is what being brave means. We did not go home to celebrate. We went to work. The board meeting was 24 hours away. We had the momentum, but we needed the smoking gun. Allegations of mismanagement were one thing. Proof of theft was another. Duncan Reeve met us at the Blue Alder office at midnight. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He placed a stack of documents on the table. I found the link, Duncan said. He spread out the papers. They were bank transfer records, heavily redacted, but readable. Here's the payment from Hollis Crown to Northcrest Advisory, Duncan said, pointing to a line item, $50,000, May 12th. Okay, I said. We knew that. Follow the money, Duncan said. He pointed to another sheet. Northcrest pays a retainer to a company called Apex Holdings in the Cayman Islands. And who owns Apex? Noah asked. Duncan dropped the final paper. It was a property deed. Apex Holdings owns a penthouse in Miami, and a villa in St. Bart's, and a commercial building in London. He looked at us. Victor stays in that villa every winter. His mistress lives in the Miami penthouse. I stared at the deed. He was not just moving debt. He was siphoning shareholder cash to buy real estate for his personal use. He was treating the company's treasury like his own wallet. This is grand larceny, Noah said. This is 20 years in federal prison. This is the end, I said, but Victor was not done. At 8 o'clock the next morning, 4 hours before the meeting, the news broke. Hollis Crown Group announces issuance of new Class B shares. I stared at the terminal. "What is he doing?" Ethan asked. "It is a poison pill." I said. My blood ran cold. "He is issuing millions of new shares. He is diluting the stock. If he floods the market with new shares, our 5% stake becomes 2%. We lose our leverage. We lose the right to call the meeting. He is burning the village to save the castle." Graham Vance shouted into the speakerphone, "We have to sue, now." Redwood Meridian's lawyers were already moving. They filed an emergency injunction in the Delaware Court of Chancery, arguing that the share issuance was a breach of fiduciary duty, a transparent attempt to entrench management at the expense of shareholders. The judge granted a rapid hearing. It was scheduled for 11 o'clock via video conference. I sat in the conference room, watching the screen. The judge was a stern woman with glasses. Victor's lawyers argued that the share issuance was necessary to raise capital for the debt. "It is a desperate measure for a desperate time." The lawyer said, "It is a mechanism to disenfranchise the voters." The Redwood lawyer countered, "It is a coup, Your Honor." The judge looked at the documents. "I am granting the temporary restraining order," she said. "The share issuance is frozen pending a full review. The board meeting will proceed as scheduled." We breathed. We had won the legal battle, but then came the moral test. 10 minutes before we were set to leave for the headquarters, an email arrived in my inbox. Sender: anonymous. Subject: the final nail. I opened it. It was a zip file. Attached are the internal emails between Victor Hollis and the CFO regarding the fraudulent inflation of the Grafton Bay assets. They explicitly discuss hiding the losses from the auditors. This guarantees a conviction. I stared at the screen. If I used these emails, the war was over instantly. Victor would go to prison. The board would have no choice. But they were stolen. They were hacked. If I presented stolen evidence, I became a criminal. I became the thing Victor accused me of being, a ruthless operator who ignored the law, and worse, if the source was tainted. The entire investigation could be thrown out. Victor could walk free on a technicality because I got greedy. Noah was looking over my shoulder. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked. "I think so." I said. "Use it," Noah said. "Print it out." I hovered my mouse over the file. "No," I said. "Hazel, are you crazy? This is the kill shot. We do not need a kill shot," I said. "We have the property deeds. We have the bank transfers. We have the law. If we use this," I continued, looking at Noah, "we validate his narrative. He says I am a spy. He says I am a thief. If I walk into that boardroom with hacked emails, I prove him right." I selected the email. I hit delete. Then I went to the trash folder and emptied it. "We win the right way," I said, "or we do not win at all." Noah looked at me. He shook his head, but he smiled. "You are a terrifying woman." Hazel Price. We drove to Caldwell City. The Hollis Crown headquarters was a glass tower that dominated the skyline. Reporters were camped out in the lobby. Security tried to stop us, but Graham Vance flashed the court order. We went up to the 50th floor. The boardroom was an expanse of mahogany and leather. The view was spectacular. The 12 directors were seated. Victor was at the head. He looked calm, but his eyes were tight. I did not sit. I stood at the end of the table. "Mrs. Hollis." Victor said, "You are not a director. You have no standing here. I am the representative of Blue Alder Capital, a major shareholder." I said, "And I am ceding my time to Mr. Graham Vance of Redwood Meridian." Graham stood up. He did not waste time. He laid out the case. He projected the charts onto the screen, the declining margins, the skyrocketing debt, the suspicious consulting fees, and then Duncan Reeves stood up. He placed the property deeds on the table. "We have evidence," Duncan said, his voice steady, "that company funds were used to purchase real estate for the CEO's personal benefit via a shell company in the Caymans." The room went silent. The directors looked at the papers. They looked at Victor. Victor did not look at the papers. He looked at me. "This is a fabrication," Victor said. "A smear campaign orchestrated by a vindictive in-law. It is a bank record. Duncan said. From your own bank. Victor? Celeste Muir spoke up. I move that we suspend Victor Hollis as CEO effective immediately, pending a forensic audit, she said. Seconded, Duncan said. Victor slammed his hand on the table. You cannot do this. I built this company. I am this company. Call the vote, Celeste said. The corporate secretary called the roll. Duncan? Yes. Celeste? Yes. The three cronies? No. Then came the middle ground, the directors who had been silent for years. They looked at the evidence. They looked at the falling stock price. They looked at the potential lawsuits. One by one, they flipped. Yes. 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 The final count was 8-4. Victor Hollis was fired. He sat there for a long moment. He adjusted his cufflinks. He took a sip of water. Then he stood up. You are fools, he said. All of you. You think you can run this ship? You don't even know where the engine room is. He looked at me. Congratulations. Hazel. You bought a company. I saved a company. I said. He smiled. It was a chilling expression. It did not reach his eyes. We will see, he said. Security escorted him out. He did not fight. He walked with his head high, nodding to the secretaries as he passed. I watched him go. The room exhaled. It was done. The board immediately appointed an interim CEO, a retired executive from a competitor who was known for being boring and safe. We spent the next 6 hours in emergency sessions. We reassured the lenders. We issued a press release. We promised a full investigation. By 6 o'clock, the stock had stabilized. It was up 4% in after-hours trading. I walked out of the conference room. I was exhausted. My bones felt heavy. Ethan was waiting for me in the lobby. He looked lighter, younger. Is it over? He asked. The vote is over, I said. He hugged me. Let's go home. I nodded. But as we walked to the car, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Alert. Large withdrawal detected. I frowned. Which account? I opened the app. It was our joint savings account. The money we had saved for a house. It was empty. I froze. Then another notification. Alert. Credit inquiry detected. I looked at Ethan. Did you move the money? I asked. No. He said, why? I checked the transaction details. Wire transfer to V.H. Revocable Trust. Authorization. Power of attorney. I felt the blood drain from my face. Ethan, I said, did you ever sign a power of attorney for your father? Maybe when you took the loan for the tuition? Ethan thought for a moment. I might have. It was a stack of papers. He said it was for the insurance. I looked at the phone. He had drained our account. He had used an old legal document, buried in the fine print of a student loan agreement, to access Ethan's finances. But why? It was only $50,000. Victor was a billionaire. He didn't need the money. It wasn't about the money. It was a signal. He was telling me that he was still inside our lives. I looked back at the glass tower. Victor had walked out smiling. He knew something we didn't. He knew that firing him was only the first step. He had rigged the building to explode after he left. I remembered the text from the outline, a dead man's switch. I grabbed Ethan's arm. We need to go back up. I said, why? Because he didn't just steal our money. Ethan, he set a trap, and I think we just stepped right into it. The victory lasted exactly 45 minutes. That was the time it took for the auditors, the lawyers from Redwood Meridian, and me to walk from the boardroom to the secure data room on the 42nd floor. We had fired Victor Hollis. We had appointed an interim CEO. We had issued the press release. We thought we had cut the head off the snake, but snakes do not need a head to bite. They have reflexes. I was sitting at a glass table, surrounded by boxes of loan agreements. The air conditioning was humming, a low, artificial drone that seemed to vibrate in my teeth. Graham Vance was reading the Master Credit Facility Agreement, the 300-page contract that governed the billions of dollars of debt the Hollis Crown Group owed to its lenders. Suddenly, Graham stopped. He did not say a word. He just went pale. What is it? I asked. He pushed the document toward me. He pointed to a paragraph on page 112, Clause 7b, the key man provision. I read it. My stomach turned over. In the event that Victor Hollis ceases to hold the position of Chief Executive Officer for any reason, including but not limited to termination, resignation, or death, such event shall constitute a material adverse change. I skipped to the penalty. Upon a material adverse change, the lender group reserves the right to accelerate all outstanding principal and interest, to be paid in full within 48 hours. Failure to remit payment will result in immediate seizure of all collateral assets. I looked up at Graham. He rigged it. I whispered, "It is a dead man's switch," Graham said, taking off his glasses. "He negotiated this 3 years ago. If he goes, the debt explodes." I looked at the numbers. The company owed $2 billion. We did not have $2 billion in cash. We barely had operating capital for the next payroll. If we did not fix this, the company would default in 2 days. The banks would seize the ships, the warehouses, the inventory, the stock would go to zero. The employees would lose everything. And Victor? He would sit in his villa and laugh. He would tell the world that the moment I took over, the company collapsed. He would frame me as the incompetent usurper who destroyed a legacy because she did not understand high finance. He had set it up so that the only way to save the company was to keep him in charge. I stood up. I felt a wave of nausea, but I forced it down. "We have to renegotiate," I said. "Hazel," Graham said, his voice tired. "The banks are already spooked. The stock dropped 12% yesterday. They want their money. They are not going to waive a $2 billion covenant just because you ask nicely. I am not going to ask nicely." I said, "I am going to show them the alternative." "What alternative?" "Total liquidation." I said, "If they call the loan. We declare Chapter 11 bankruptcy tomorrow. They will get pennies on the dollar. They will be tied up in court for a decade. Or they can give me 30 days to stabilize the ship." I grabbed my coat. "Where are you going?" Graham asked. "Harborstone," I said. "The lead lender is waiting." The drive to Harborstone took 2 hours. I used every minute of it. I was on the phone with Duncan Reeve, with the interim CEO, with the head of HR. I was building a plan. It was not a pretty plan. It was a survival kit. Asset separation. We would sell the private jets. We would sell the corporate apartments. We would sell the non-core real estate holdings that Victor had accumulated like trophies. Governance reforms. We would implement a whistleblower hotline. We would ban all related party transactions, cost controls. We would freeze executive bonuses. We would cut the marketing budget. But I drew a red line. No mass layoffs. I told the interim CEO on the phone. "Hazel," he argued, "labor is our biggest cost. The banks will want to see heads roll. If we fire the workers, we kill the business." I said, "The logistics division runs on trust. If the drivers and the warehouse managers think we are stripping the company, they will walk, and then we have nothing to sell. We protect the pensions. We protect the jobs. We cut the fat at the top, not the muscle at the bottom." I arrived at the bank headquarters in Harborstone at 4 p.m. The building was a monolith of black granite. I was shown into a conference room that looked like a courtroom. 5 bankers sat on one side. They looked like undertakers. "Mrs. Hollis," the lead banker said. He was a man named Sterling, no relation to the PR firm. "We understand there has been a change in management." "There has." I said. I placed my binder on the table. "We are invoking Clause 7b. Sterling said, "We require full repayment by Friday. If you do that," I said, sitting down, "you will lose 40% of your principal." Sterling blinked. "Excuse me?" I opened the binder. "This is a liquidation analysis." I said, "If you force a fire sale, you will be selling distressed assets into a cold market. You will get 60 cents on the dollar, best case scenario." I slid the binder across the table, or, I continued, "You can grant us a waiver for the key man clause. You can give us 6 months to restructure. We will sell the luxury assets. We will service the debt. And you will get 100% of your money, plus interest." Sterling looked at the binder. He looked at his colleagues. "Victor Hollis is a proven operator. Sterling said, "You are an analyst. Victor Hollis is a thief." I said calmly. The room went silent. "He has been using your capital to fund his lifestyle." I said, "We have the evidence. We are filing a police report for embezzlement. If you support him, you are not backing a proven operator. You are backing a liability. Do you want to explain to your compliance department why you accelerated a loan to protect a man who is under investigation for fraud?" Sterling stared at me. He tapped his pen on the table. He looked at the binder again. "Asset sales?" he asked. "The jets," I said. "The apartments, the art collection, and the workforce?" "Untouched." I said, "They are the revenue generator. We do not burn the engine." Sterling looked at me for a long time. "You have 30 days, he said. "If you miss a single interest payment, we take the keys." I walked out of the bank. I did not smile. I did not cheer. I just breathed. I had bought us time, but time was a finite resource. I returned to the headquarters in Caldwell City to find a war zone. Victor had not gone quietly into the night. He had gone to the press. Reporters were swarming the plaza, and there were protesters, not employees, but people holding signs that looked professionally printed. "Save our jobs. Stop the hostile takeover. Hazel Price equals corporate greed." He had flipped the narrative. He had leaked a story that I was a hedge fund puppet, that I had orchestrated a coup to strip the company and sell it for parts. He was using the fear of the workers against me. I pushed through the crowd with security. People shouted at me. "Shame on you!" a woman screamed. I kept my head down. Inside, the lobby was chaos. The employees were terrified. They were huddled in groups, whispering. They looked at me with suspicion. I saw Ethan near the elevators. He looked exhausted. He had been trying to calm people down, but he was just the son of the tyrant. They did not trust him either. "They think we are going to fire everyone," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. Dad sent an email to the managers before his access was cut. He told them the new board is planning a 50% reduction in force. He is poisoning the well. I said, "We have to talk to them." Ethan said, I looked at the frightened faces in the lobby. I looked at the security guards who were nervously fingering their radios. "Call a meeting," I said. Now, everyone, the warehouse staff, the drivers, the admins, get them in the atrium, and set up a video link for the remote sites." I stood on a small riser in the center of the atrium an hour later. There were 500 people in the room. Another 3,000 were watching on screens across the country. The silence was heavy. It was the silence of people who were waiting for the axe to fall. I did not have a speech prepared. I did not have a teleprompter. "My name is Hazel Price," I said into the microphone. My voice echoed. "I am not a billionaire." I said, "I am the daughter of a carpenter. I grew up in a house where we worried about the cost of heating oil. I know what it feels like to be afraid for your job." I saw a few people shift. They were listening, but they were not convinced. "You have heard rumors today." I continued. "You have heard that the board plans to fire you. You have heard that we are selling the company for parts." I paused. "Those are lies." A murmur ran through the crowd. "Victor Hollis told you those lies because he wants you to be afraid." I said, "He wants you to be afraid so that you will fight for him, but he does not fight for you. He used the profits of this company to buy houses you will never see and to pay consultants who do not exist." I held up the paper from the bank. "I just came from the lenders." I said, "We have a deal. The company is safe, but the deal has conditions. We are selling the corporate jets. We are selling the executive apartments. We are cutting the bonuses for the top management." I looked directly at a group of warehouse workers in the front row. "But we are not cutting a single job in operations." I said, "We are not touching the pension fund. Your healthcare is safe. Your paychecks will clear on Friday." I took a breath. "I cannot promise you that it will be easy. We have a lot of mess to clean up. But I can promise you this. No one is going to treat you like an asset on a spreadsheet anymore. You are the company, and as long as I have a voice in this room, you come first." There was silence. Then, slowly, a man in the back started to clap. It was the man from the clam shack, the whistleblower, Then another person clapped, then another. It was not a thunderous ovation. It was not the kind of applause Victor got when he handed out bonuses. It was cautious. It was the sound of people who were willing to wait and see. I stepped down. My legs were shaking. Ethan was there. He took my hand. "You did good," he whispered. "I hope so." I said. The next morning, the final battle began. The investigation was complete. The forensic accountants had worked through the night. The evidence was overwhelming. We scheduled the board vote for 10 o'clock. This was not just a vote to fire him. He was already fired. This was a vote to terminate him for cause. If we terminated him for cause, for fraud, for breach of fiduciary duty, for gross negligence, we could void his severance package, we could void his stock options, and most importantly, we could argue to the courts that the key man clause was invalidated because it was part of a fraudulent scheme. Victor arrived with his lawyers. He walked into the boardroom as if he still owned it. He sat at the far end of the table. He looked at me, and he smiled. He thinks he is going to win. I thought, he thinks he can talk his way out of this. The interim CEO called the meeting to order. "We are here to review the findings of the special committee." The CEO said. Victor's lawyer stood up. "This is a kangaroo court." The lawyer said, "My client denies all allegations. The so-called evidence is circumstantial. You are attempting to void a valid employment contract based on hearsay." I stood up. "It is not hearsay." I said. I projected the timeline onto the screen. May 12th. I said, $50,000 transferred to Northcrest Advisory. May 14th. $50,000 transferred from Northcrest to Apex Holdings. May 15th. Apex Holdings purchases a property at 12 Ocean Drive. St. Bart's. I clicked the remote. A photo of the villa appeared on the screen. "Who is the registered occupant of this villa?" I asked. I clicked again. A copy of a utility bill. "Victor Hollis." I turned to Victor. "You stole from the shareholders to buy a vacation home." I said, "That is not a strategy. That is theft." Victor did not flinch. "I was advised that it was a legitimate tax structure," he said smoothly. "If my accountants made an error, that is on them." I clicked the remote again. "This is an email." I said, "From you to the head of Northcrest. Dated May 10th. I read it aloud. "Make sure the transfer is routed through the Cayman entity. I do not want the auditors to see the link to the property. Use the consulting invoice template." The room went deadly quiet. This was not the stolen email. This was a different one, found on the Northcrest server that Mara had subpoenaed legally. It was admissible. It was damning. "You directed the fraud." "Victor." I said, "You ordered the cover-up." Victor's lawyer looked at Victor. He looked pale. He knew he had lost. "I have more." I said. I showed the threats, the text messages to board members, the payments to the PR firm to smear me, the payments to the journalist. I built a wall of facts, brick by brick. I did not raise my voice. I did not call him names. I just showed the room exactly who he was. When I was finished, I sat down. The interim CEO looked at the board. I moved to terminate Victor Hollis for cause. Effective immediately. He said. Duncan Reeves seconded. The vote was unanimous. Even the cronies voted yes. They were trying to save their own skins now. The CEO slid a letter across the table to me. As the representative of the largest shareholder block, he said, and as the chair of the special committee, you should sign it. Mrs. Hollis. I took the pen. My hand shook. Not from fear, but from the weight of it. I was signing the end of an era. I was destroying a man who had been a titan of industry for 40 years. I was dismantling the myth of the Hollis family. I signed my name, Hazel Price. I handed the letter to Victor. You are terminated. I said, you are stripped of your unvested options. You are removed from the board. You are banned from the premises. Victor looked at the letter. He did not rip it up. He folded it neatly and put it in his pocket. He stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked around the room, at the people who had served him for decades. Traitors, he said softly. All of you. Then he looked at me. He walked over to where I was sitting. Ethan tensed next to me, ready to jump up. Victor did not attack. He leaned down. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who knows a secret that you have forgotten. "You think you won," he whispered. "I did win." I said, "You bought a company." "Hazel," he said. His voice was a low purr. "You bought the debt. You bought the buildings. You bought the headaches." He glanced at Ethan. "But you did not buy a family." He leaned closer. "Ask him about the summer of 2010. Victor whispered. "Ask him what happened in the boathouse. Ask him why I had to pay the police chief $50,000 to lose the file." I froze. Victor straightened up. He patted Ethan on the shoulder. "Good luck, son," he said. "You are going to need it." Victor turned and walked out of the room. He walked past the security guards. He walked to the elevator. He was not arrested. The police investigation would take months. The FBI would take longer. For now, he was a free man. I sat there, the cold dread spreading through my chest, the summer of 2010. I looked at Ethan. He was staring at the door where his father had exited. His face was white. He looked like he was going to be sick. "Ethan?" I asked. He did not answer. "What happened in the boathouse?" I asked. Ethan turned to look at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a terror I had never seen before. It was not fear of his father. It was fear of me. Fear of me knowing. I can't," he whispered. He stood up and ran out of the room. I sat alone in the boardroom. The victory champagne was on ice in the corner. The lawyers were shaking hands. The company was saved. The stock was rising. But as I looked out the window at the city below, I realized the war was not over. Victor had left a bomb behind. Not a financial one, a human one. He had planted a seed of doubt that would grow in the cracks of my marriage until it shattered everything I had fought to protect. I had fired the boss. I had saved the workers. I had beaten the billionaire. But as I watched the sun set over the empire I now controlled, I knew one thing for certain. The revenge was finished. But the fallout had just begun. Thank you so much for listening to my billionaire in-law called me trash at dinner. So I bought his company and fired him. This story has been a journey through the high-stakes world of corporate warfare and family betrayal. And I hope you enjoyed every twist and turn of Hazel's fight for dignity. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop a comment below and tell me which country or city you are tuning in from. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this series, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories so you never miss an episode. We have many more tales of justice, karma, and resilience coming your way. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. What did you think of the ending? Do you think Hazel made the right choice in the end? Or was the cost too high? Share your theories about what happens next with Ethan and the secret of the boathouse. I read every comment, and I can't wait to discuss it with you. Until next time, stay sharp. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding where they said you would fail.